Hi everyone, this is Al and welcome back to the One Code Camp. If you're still new in web development and just wanted to learn from the basics, this step-by-step guide is the perfect tutorial for you. Today, we will build a web game for the timeless rock, paper, scissors. So without further ado, let's get into it.
So now let us code. Please head on to codepen.io. This is the code editor we will use for today's tutorial. So on our left side of our screen, we can see here the start coding button that has a rainbow color design. We can click on that button to start using CodePen. But let me tell you that you don't have to sign up or log in to this code editor. But it is highly recommended to do so because when we do, our codes will be saved. Okay, so let's hit that rainbow button. And if we can see three boxes here, each for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript or JS, then we are good to go. The first thing that we need to do is to do our HTML or hypertext markup language. Its purpose is to structure content on the web. On the very first line, let's put this code right there. And this statement right here indicates that our website is written in HTML5, which is the latest version of the hypertext markup language. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is to put on these tags. Tags are used to define the elements of our HTML documents. The tag we just added is called the HTML tags. The opening HTML tag, which is this one, defines the beginning, while the closing HTML tag defines the end of our HTML document. Everything between these tags is considered part of the HTML document. In our opening HTML tag, we can add attributes. Attributes provide additional information about HTML elements. They are always included in the opening tag, often elements, and are written as name value pairs. Say like this. Here we added the language attribute. It has the key lang and the value n. These attributes specify the language of our HTML document. After, within the HTML tag, we can add the head tags right there. Okay. The head tag is where we put the information of the website itself. The most famous data for a website is its title. So let's add that title tag within our head tag. Right there. Oops. We forgot this one right there. Okay. Look good. So of course our game is rock, paper, scissors. So we will put rock, paper, scissors between the title tags. Right there. Okay. So whatever we put here in the title tag will be visible to our user in their browser tabs. Okay, after our head tag, let's put on our body tag. Then right there. Cool. So the body tags define the main content of the HTML document. Everything that is visible on the web page, including text, images, links, forms, and other elements that we can see is typically placed between these two tags. Within the body tag, let's add a headings by using h1 tags. Okay, right there. So the purpose of the headings is to structure the content on a web page and indicate the hierarchy and importance of different sections. We usually use headings to indicate the title of the web page. You might wonder if there are H2 and H3 as well. Let me tell you, there is, but it's another story for another day. But for now, to see the power of the H1 tag, let's put their rock, paper, scissors in between the H1 tags, and let's see what will happen. Okay, let's see. Okay, now we can see the words rock, paper, scissors in our web page. Next, let's put a div tag. Div just means division, and this div tag's purpose is to create a container that groups together HTML elements. In this container, let us use this where our score will be shown. Inside the tag, let's place this. Right there. Okay. So let me introduce to you another attribute we call ID. The ID attribute is used to create a unique identifier for an element. No two elements should have the same ID. Here we give our container the unique ID score. Okay. After the score container, let's create another container, again by using the div tag right there. So we will use this div or division to contain 3 buttons where we would choose the rock, paper, or scissors. To do that, between the div tag, let's put on the button tags. Okay, let's expand this one right there. As we can see, okay, here, as we can see, there is a very small button display just below the score. The button has no label yet, so let's put the term rock on this button by placing the term between the button tags, and there we can see that the button is already visible. It has width and it has length and it has the label rock. Let's do the same thing for paper and scissors right there. And we can see that we already have 3 buttons there. Now that the 3 buttons are all done, let me introduce to you another attribute we call class. A class is essentially right there. Let's put class on our container that holds onto our 3 buttons. A class is essentially a way to group multiple HTML elements together so they can be styled or manipulated in a consistent way. Here in our case, we are grouping 3 buttons. So for now, let's leave our HTML like that. Let's do the designing later on. What we will do next is to add some functionalities to our web app by doing some codes in JavaScript. Let's hide the CSS box right there. And then the first thing that we need to do here is to add some functionalities when our buttons are clicked, because as you can see, even though we are clicking the buttons, nothing is happening. To do that, let's create a function. A function is just a block of code designed to perform a specific task. In our case, the task of the function is again to display what was chosen by the user. To do that, we put the word function right there, and the name of our function is playGame. Now, inside the parentheses is an argument we call player choice. Arguments are the values or variables that we pass into a function when we will call it. These values provide input to the function we are making, allowing our function to perform a task based on the value of the argument. Later on, we would appreciate it and understand more what we mean by it. But for now, the argument player here, player choice, represents the choice made by the player, of course. The next thing that we need to do is create the possible choices the computer will choose. So within these curly braces, let's put on this. We do this by creating an array, and it contains 3 values. We have rock, paper, and scissors. So this array is contained in our constant variable. Constant variable we name choices. It is a constant variable, or it is constant because whatever happens, the value of choices will never change. After, we want that the computer will choose among 3 randomly. So let's put this one right there. Oops. We are lacking. We lack our variable right there. So to do this, we call a JavaScript function we call math and use a random method for this. This method generates a random floating point number between 0 and 1, where 0 is included but 1 is not. So this method may generate 0, 0.55, 0.83, 0.13, or whatnot, but it can never generate 1. Now, whatever is the result of this random method, we should multiply it by 3. The reason is, we have 3 choices, and by multiplying it by 3, we are sure that it will generate a number between 0 and 3. Here, 0 is included, but again, 3 is not. Now that we have a number, but it is a decimal number because it is a floating point, we need to make it as an integer. We have to remove the decimal places. To do this, we call the floor method there of the math function and make this random method as its argument. Now, it ensures that we get a random integer in the range of 0 and 2. The reason why we are doing this is because JavaScript cannot randomly choose a string here in an array. It uses the index of an array element, and the very first array here, the rock, the very first array element is rock again, and its index is 0. That means the index here is 0, the index of paper is 1, and the index of scissors is 2. So needless to say, to our constant variable computer choice here will return not an index number, but the array element itself, rock, paper, scissors. The next thing that we need to do is to display in the website what option the player and computer chose by creating a new container every time we click an option or button. To do that, we will create another function, and we will name that display choice. And then inside the parentheses are 2 arguments, or 2 parameters, 2 parameters, player and choice. The first parameter, player, represents the name of the player who made a choice, and the second argument is the choice made by the player. It can be rock, paper, or scissors. The next thing that we need to do is to put on this code. Right there. So what we are doing here is creating a new div element, a new container. We do that by calling on document. The term document here is a reserved keyword in JavaScript that refers to the whole HTML document itself. And the reason why we are calling the HTML document is for us to interact with it and make some modifications. When we call onto the document, it'll provide us a plethora of methods we use to interact with the HTML, and one of its methods is the create element. This method is used to create a new HTML element. The create element method accepts one argument, which will be the basis of that HTML element that will be created. In our case here, we are creating a new container, as what's inside in the parentheses is div. And we assign the process to our constant variable we named choice div right here. Now, the next line of code is this one. The next line of code, or we call it a statement, as we call it, it sets the contents of our container we are creating. To do this, we call the variable that holds the process of creating a new HTML element choice div, and let's choose a property called text content. So whatever is inside this backticks, these are what we call backticks. It's just a string. We call this template literal. It allows us to use variables inside a string, which we call placeholders. These are what we call the placeholders. As we can see here, we have two of them. Placeholders are denoted by a $sign and a curly braces, a pair of curly braces, and inside the curly braces is the variable name. As we can observe, the variables we are using inside our placeholders are just the parameters. So if the name of the player is John and he chose rock, it will just say John chose rock. The next thing that we need to do is take the div element that we created earlier and add it as a child to the body of the HTML document. To do that, we call in again the document reserved word, choose the body property, and choose append child method. This method accepts one argument, and what we will put inside is the variable that contains our div or container, which is choice div. Now that we are somehow done with our display choice function, let's call this function in the play game function right here. Let's put it right here. So when we call the function, these two right here are the arguments, not parameters, again, arguments. Arguments again hold the value. The first argument of our display choice function is the name of the player, John Doe. And the second argument is a parameter, player choice, which is just the parameter of the function play game. Let's call the display function again. Now to display what our computer has chosen, we set the first argument as computer, and the second argument will be the variable that holds the random index number, which is computer choice. So that means once the play game function fires up, it will create two containers. One that holds John Doe's choice, and the other container holds the computer's choice. Now let's see if this works. Let's click any buttons here. Oops, why we are seeing nothing? We are seeing nothing. That is because we are forgetting something. We need to attach the play game function to our buttons. To do this, let's go back to our HTML document. Locate our buttons. Here, these are our buttons. And we will add the onClick attribute right there. So onClick is also what we call an event attribute. An event attribute defines a specific action or behavior that should occur when a particular event happens. In this case, whenever we click the button, the play game function will fire up. Remember that play game function has one parameter, right? This one. So we should set one argument as well. The argument inside the function should be the option clicked. Because the button is assigned for rock, the argument here for the play game function should be rock. Let's do the same thing for our paper and scissors. Right there. And for our scissors as well. Okay, now let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Now it works. Okay, let's click on paper, let's click on scissors. It works. So, but the problem here is the divs that contain the choices does not. Oops. Oh, the reason why the scissors is not working is because we forgot to use the on click. Okay, now let's try. There we go. Okay. Now, but the problem is the divs that contains the choices does not fade out. No, it keeps on stacking up containers whenever we click a button. All we can do here is go back to our JavaScript here, and in the display choice function, we can add this code right there. Okay. Set timeout is a JavaScript function that allows us to schedule the execution of a function after a specified amount of time has passed. Here, we are just telling the application that, hey, we need you to remove these containers we created after 3000 milliseconds or 2 seconds by using the remove method. Okay, now that the displaying of players' choices are working, let's see if it works. Let's see if this will fade out after, yes, it fades out after 3 seconds. Now that it is working, let's determine who the winner is. Let's go back to our JavaScript function, or JavaScript document, and create a new function we will name determine winner. Alright, there. So, it will need 2 parameters, player choice and computer choice. I think it's pretty obvious what these parameters represent. And then, inside the function, let's create a conditional statement if, right there. So, if the container or the conditional statement just says that if the choice of our player is strictly equal to the choice of the computer, the function will return a string that says it's a tie. Let's add an else if statement after if. Okay, let's add else if right there. Okay, this is a block of code, but don't worry, we will walk you through it. So it just says here that if the choice of the player is rock and the choice of the computer is scissors, or if the choice of the player is paper and the choice of the computer is rock, or if the choice of the player is scissors and the choice of the computer is paper, then our application will return, or this function will return a string that says you win. Okay. Then let's add the else statement here. Okay. Let's clean up this code block. Then let's add our else. Now, in the events, nothing of the conditions here, nothing of these conditions happened. The choice of the player, say the choice of the player is scissors and the choice of the computer is rock, then the determine winner function will return a string message that says you lose. Okay, so from now on, when we say string message, it just refers to you win, you lose, or it's a tie. Again, that's string message. Now that we are done with this function, we are actually done with our determine winner function. It's time to call this function in the play game function right here. We call it by typing its function name, just like what we did in display choice function. Here, this is the function name, and the first argument of this is player choice, which is just a parameter of the play game function. And the second argument here is the constant variable computer choice, which again returns a random array element of the array choices. Now, let's contain whatever this function is returning inside a constant variable we name results. Now, let's see if this new code works. Does it determine the winner? No, it doesn't. The reason is we do not have any container that will hold the string message that the determine winner function returns. What we can do here is create a container. We can do the same thing as what we did in the display choice function, where it will create a container every time we click on it. But we don't want that approach, because we want that the string message will persist in our website. When we say persist, it will stay there whatever happens. What we can do is go back to our HTML file right here and recreate a div. Here, we create a div with an ID result just right after the container that holds the 3 buttons. After we go back to our JS file, and then we need to access this div right here by calling the keywords document, this one, and use the getElementById method. Now, the argument of this will be the ID name of the div, which is result. So you can see here in our HTML, we use result. In our JavaScript, we use result as well as its argument. When we then contain this div in a constant variable, we name result div. Okay, and then after that, we set the text content of the div with a string message to determine when our function returns by assigning it with a variable result. Okay, and then let's try if it will work. Oh, there it is. Here, it's a tie. This is the string message. And even though the choices of our player and our computer fades away, it's a tie did not fade away because, again, we made it at a point that it will persist. The last functionality that we will add is to display our score. Now, to do that, in our JS file, we will create a new function. Don't worry, this is a last function we will create for this tutorial. We will create a function and we will name it update score. And it has one parameter we will name results. Now this parameter, the string that represents the result of the game, which is it's a tie, you win or you lose. Now inside of a function, we need to access the container that will hold our score, right? Which is a div in between h1 and the container that holds the buttons. It is a div with an ID of score. So we need to access that. We access this container again by using the getElementById method of the document, which we contain in a constant variable we name score div. So now we add a conditional statement right after this statement, right there. Now it just says here that if the string message includes or has the term win on it, we have to increment score or add 1 to the variable score. And then after, we then set the content of the score div with the value of score. Again, we use template literal for this so that we can use the score variable. Now, we are talking about score variables. We are manipulating the score variable, but we still did not declare the variable itself. So what we want to do is to go all the way up, all right here. And then let's initialize the variable score with the value 0. We are doing this so that the variable score can be accessed throughout the JavaScript file. We named this, if I'm not mistaken, global variable. Now after that, let's call the update score function in our play game function. How do we do that? Right here, just like that. So calling the function update score, and the argument will results again returns a string message. You win, you lose, or it's a try. So let's try if it works. You lose, so that means we don't have any score. Okay, so we won. So the score incremented by 1. It's a tie. It did not give us a +1. It's a tie again. And it's a tie again. Ooh, okay, now that we won, our score is already 2. So that's actually just it for our JavaScript functionalities and HTML. The last thing that we need to do here is to put some flair and design to our web app. So we go to our CSS box. Let's hide this JavaScript and HTML and expand the CSS box. Okay, now when we work on our CSS, the first thing that we need to do is type in the tag or the HTML elements, and inside our curly braces are the properties of that element. In this case, whatever's inside the body tag, it'll have a font style of Arial. All texts are aligned in the center, as you can see there. It's transferred from our left-hand side of the screen to the center. And then all elements inside the body will have a margin of 2 pixels, so all of its sides. By the way, margin are just the spaces that surround the elements. The next thing that we need to do is to decide our heading. To do that, we do it like this. So let's change the color of our H1 using the hexadecimal #333. It's giving us a shade of gray. Next up are our buttons. Now we can choose to use a class name for this because we have, as we have remembered in the HTML document, we grouped all of the buttons in a container that has a class name choices. To do that, we just need to type in period first and then the class name. So it just says here that the container that holds the buttons will have a margin in the bottom of 20 pixels. Now, so you can see here, its effect is that the container that contains the string message has, a space between them. Okay, next is to design our buttons. Buttons. Right there. Okay, so it says here that the size of the text inside the button is 16 pixels. Each of the buttons will have a margin of 10 pixels for all the sides. Also have a padding of 10 pixels. Oops, let's remove the 20 px. Right there. Well, we can also use 20 right there. Ooh, that is cool. So, by the way, if margin is a space that surrounds the element, padding is a space inside the elements. Okay. So the cursor property just sets that whenever we put our pointer in the buttons, it will change from a regular arrow to an index finger. The background sets the color of the button. It's kind of giving us a shade of green. The color property right there sets the text color inside the button to be white. And when we say border is not, that means there is no any line that outlines the buttons. So if we remove this one, we can see that it will be, there is a kind of black line that surrounds the button, but we don't want that. So let's put border and then not. The border edges here is the one responsible why our buttons have round edges. Now let's give a design to our results, which holds the string message, you win, you lose, or it's a tie. Right there. So, remember that the container that contains the string message has an ID with a value result. So when we use the ID of an element, we start with a pound or a hashtag and then a class name. Or sorry, the ID name, Sorry for that, ID name. It says here that the margin at the top and the bottom of this container will be set to 20 pixels. The font size of the string message is 18 pixels and it is on bold. And the color of the string message is in the shade of gray using the hexadecimal 333. So the last thing that we need to design is our score. So it's kind of the same with the results. We will be using the ID. So let's start by using the hashtag symbol. Okay, right there. And it just says here that the score will have a size of 24 pixels. We can see that it has gotten bigger. It is bolded. And the color of the text is gray by using again the hexadecimal 333. Okay, I think this is pretty much it. And we have a working and a designed simple rock, paper, scissors game. So let's see if it will work. Okay, we lose. So we didn't have any score added. We won. So our score is already 3. It's a tie. It's all a tie again. And then we lose again. And we won over the computer. So I do hope we learned something new today and see you guys next time.